Good morning. Hubert Johnson here with Taxes Made Easy. And we're going to be talking today about identity theft. Ah, so it sounds like a big, scary topic, but we're going to try to break it down, give you some good advice on how to avoid it. What is it, what to look out for in spotting identity theft attempts, and what to do when it happens, because sometimes you just can't prevent it. Unfortunately, it's so pervasive in our society, and there's so many. There's whole countries supporting and funding illegal operations like this. China's the biggest culprit out there. So again, this is not going away anytime soon. But how do you protect yourself? How do you protect your family and make sure your financial situation is not ruined by scammers? So thank you for watching live or on rebroadcast, and we'll be back shortly. Okay, welcome back, everybody. Hubert Johnson here with Taxes Made Easy, and we're going to be talking a lot about the fun of identity theft. Now, why would I talk about this? Because it is so important. I've seen way too many people hurt by identity theft, by scams, etc. And again, this is more of a public service announcement because there are ways we can help, but overall, the best thing you can do is prevent it from happening in the first place. So I was thinking about this beforehand. I was like, can I really talk about this for a whole hour? And so I was like, you know what? I need to type out a memo, see how much. It just started flowing easily, a page and a half, because there was so much happening. As I thought about it, this isn't something I normally lecture on, but again, it's absolutely important, and it's such a big deal out there. So what kind of identity theft, fraud are out there? So first of all, um, there's a lot of scams out there. So when you talk about scams, identity theft scams, what's really going on, this is where people are reaching out to you and trying to get your money. So a nasty one in particular, that's now a couple of couple of people that then hired us were love triangle scams, and they target the elderly. And this particular one targeted elderly Asian ladies, and it's very messed up. And I've seen it target other people as well that weren't Asian, but this particular one nabbed somebody in San Francisco, one person in New York, complete opposite sides of the country, same scam, and they cleaned out $1 million out of one and 500,000 out of the other. So whenever you have someone you haven't met, Facebook or online chat rooms or whatever, it's very, very common to have feelings, to develop feelings before you actually know the person. And it's an easy way to scam people. So here's the scary truth of what happened. They had them empty out their retirement accounts. They pulled all that money out, gave it to the scammers. It is still a taxable event. So in both cases, they pulled this money out. They lost all their money, most of their retirement, and then they still have to pay the taxes to the state and the IRS. Now we were able to, on the $1 million one, we were able to do an offer and compromise with the state, and then settle it with the IRS, put them in a hardship status where they don't have to pay anything. They do have equity and property. But with the other one, again, we were able to settle with do the flip, settle with the IRS, and then with the state, set up an installment agreement to handle that balance. California, their offers are horrible, but we were able to greatly minimize the damage. But not everybody can afford that. I have one recently where a gal was scammed out of 600,000. She was Caucasian and married. Definitely put a damper on her relationship, made their marriage a lot more difficult. But now she's got to deal with the taxes coming from that. So again, it happens regularly. It happens to all kinds of people. And these are professional scammers. They know what to say. They know what buttons to press. Again, they have honed their craft, and That's why the government is always a few steps behind, because they're getting better. The government is always responding to what they're seeing, what they're finding, what's getting reported to them. So they're always playing a little bit of catch up here. So that's when people try to scam you out of money. Another scam is letters. So people will send letters. Now, these aren't all scams per se. A lot of them can be very misleading advertising. I think it should be illegal. Most people think it should be illegal. But this happens all the time. If you have any tax issues, you'll get, once a tax lien is filed, it's public knowledge, and then you'll get overwhelmed with all kinds of letters claiming your house is going to get seized, your cars are going to be seized, sheriff's warrants will be issued against you. Some will even say that you're going to get arrested. It's overwhelming. People get these delusional letters. Most of them are just really shady advertising. So my clients get it all the time when I wrap up a case, or if we're doing something where a tax lien is filed, but we settle the case. Then they'll get this deluge of letters, and flooding in, and they'll call us. What are all these? And we tell them, look, we review tax letter or any kind of letters like that for free. We do this as a public service because there is so much confusion. We'll review it and we'll say, hey, this is legitimate or this is fake. We can tell very quickly by looking at a letter if it's a legitimate IRS letter, because we deal with them all the time. They're all numbered. They all have to look a certain way. Sometimes there's something that is a little different because it's coming from a revenue office or something like that, but that's the exception, not the rule. So usually there's some kind of underlying tax problem, and we can dig into that. It can bring business our way, but again, we review letters all the time for people and say, look, this is already taken care of. These are people just trying to scare you into calling. And if you read the fine print at the bottom, and I have talked about this already, if you read the fine print, it often says we are not the U.S. government or any of its representatives, but it's in fine print at the bottom, but they do their best to make it look like it's from the government. They do their best to scare the living daylights out of people so that you call, and then they take your information, and most of them are just referral services. They send it to all kinds of companies that buy these leads, and they're not aware oftentimes of what kind of deceptive advertising is being used. Or maybe they are. We don't use that kind of advertising ourselves because I don't think it's ethical. But when you get these letters, the worst thing is when people call you. So let's move to calls. The IRS or state collection agencies will almost never call you. So these scammers will initiate the contact. They'll reach out to you and say, hey, we need money. They'll ask for your personal information without identifying who they are. So how do you tell if someone's an actual representative or not? They will have an IRS or state employee identification number. You can get their manager's number. So you say, who are you? Where are you located? Give me your name, your number, and I want the name and number of your manager. If it's a scam, they won't give it to you. They won't even make up a number. They won't even try. They'll just hem and haw and get frustrated because they know you're onto them. And so, and again, I've talked to plenty. I've called these people bringing these letters like, well, I'll call. And I'll call, and it's somebody else, or if it's a scammer, I get scam calls. And I always try to play with them and tell them what jerks they are. But it's because it's hurt so many people that I've seen personally. So I know better, but the average person doesn't. And taxes and dealing with the IRS can be so confusing. I had someone in my office in tears, almost in tears the other day, because it is so frustrating dealing with the IRS, dealing with the states. They, again, knowing how this works. So ask for some identifying information from them if they're not willing to give you their full name and employee identification number and their name and number for their manager. They're not legitimate. Get their information, say thank you for their information. I'm going to check on this, and if not, I'm going to report it to the Attorney General and FBI. If they get off the phone like that, it's a scam. So one of the biggest keys here when people call, and again, people get called all the time by scammers. They will ask for immediate payment. So the IRS states will not ask for immediate payment. They'll tell you have to pay right here, right now. I'll check on my time. And then they'll tell you that hey, you have to pay by card or the gift cards, or they'll want some kind of payment that's harder to track. You do not want to send any kind of payment like that. So any kind of legitimate payment will go through the IRS website or the state website. You can mail in a payment and do it by personal check, so you can cancel the check or contest it if it turns out to be fraud. But I prefer you go to the IRS or state website. Don't let them direct you to a website. If they're directing you to a website and they don't say, hey, go to irs.gov or nebraska.dor or whatever, be very wary about them trying to direct you to a place. Now, if it's a legitimate, if you just type in Nebraska taxes or Idaho taxes or California taxes, it should come up pretty easily and tell you exactly how to make those payments. Whenever you're making a payment, if you're paying online, make sure you're at the legitimate website. 2, you should get an immediate receipt. So scammers don't give receipts. They don't want proof of payment. They don't want any money trail because most receipts come from a legitimate source, a payment processor or something that can be contested. So you can pay online, you can pay by check, you can pay at a local office. So if you're not sure, walk into an IRS office. You can look up IRS office near me, state collection office near me. You can walk in there and make that payment. And you will get a receipt right there on the spot. So scammers are not going to have brick and mortar buildings to try to scam people, because then it leaves a footprint. Again, they have to lease it. There's some kind of paper trail. And that's the number one thing that they avoid. You want a paper trail whenever you're paying anybody connecting to taxes. And the worst thing is scammers asking for gift cards, prepaid cards, immediate payments in cash or other kind. Absolutely a scam. So we're going to touch on some exceptions when we come back, but we're coming up on a quick commercial break, and I think we're going to fill up this time very easily today. And I hope this is very helpful to you and your friends. Welcome back, everybody, to Taxes Made Easy, here with Hubert Johnson with Guardian Tax Law. We talked about people sending letters. Again, if you're not sure about a letter, get it checked by a tax professional. Always get that second opinion, have it verified. Again, anybody pressuring you into giving them money right there on the spot, it's most likely a scam. Now, the IRS will tell you, hey, you need to pay taxes, but they won't tell you need to pay me right here, right now. They will tell you legitimate tax sources. This is how you pay. They will give you an address. They will give you different payment options even. You can walk the payment in. You can send it by personal check. If you want to do it online, this is how you do it. And they will direct you to legitimate websites, irs.gov. If anybody sends you anywhere else but irs.gov for the IRS, it's a scam. So if you're not sure, verify, and they should be very sensitive to if you think you're being scammed, get it figured out. Don't use this as an excuse to delay. Get it figured out in a couple days. But anybody saying paying this right here, right now, most likely is scam. Now, scammers are getting more sophisticated and they're using social media to scam people. Bar none. You can take this to the bank. If someone's contacting you through Facebook, through Instagram, any kind of social media where there's communication and they're asking for money, it's a scam. Unless you've got some kind of deal with them. But if anybody's representing that you owe taxes or that you should give your personal information to them through social media, it's a scam. Do not do that. Do not give them your personal information. They will use it for the worst possible purposes. They'll sell your information, etc. Do not disclose your personal information. Do not make payments. Do not report them. Tell them that you are reporting them. And you wonder, well, if they're on Facebook, they could be anywhere. Yeah, but the FBI does track this information. And it is important to report it so the IRS not only can track the information, but they can kind of see what's going on and what the latest trends are. So and we'll get into this more when we talk about what to do about this. So again, number one thing, when you are making a legitimate payment, you will get a receipt. You will get confirmation of payment, walk into an office, go to irs.gov or the website for the actual taxing agency, look up their numbers. When people call us and they say, well, what's the state number? We'll give you the number. We don't care. We would rather you be directed to the source than be another victim. Don't let yourself be another victim. Now, there are a couple of exceptions, rare exceptions, that I want to talk about where someone will ask for payment. But even then, they won't ask for immediate, you have to pay us right now or we're going to come and arrest you. Those kinds of pressure cells are only used by scammers. Now, if a revenue officer is assigned to your case, they might say, hey, I need you to make payment right now. But you can always ask, okay, I want to pay this way or that way. I don't trust you. I don't know who you are. Give me your card. Give me your identification number. They should have an IRS card. They should have an employee identification number. And you should be able to get their manager's name and number. Now, if they have a card and they come out to your business or they come to your home, it's rare that this happens, but it can happen. So again, you can say, look, I want to pay through irs.gov. Or I want to walk the payment into a local office because I don't know you, I don't trust you. That is perfectly fine. If they try to direct you to a specific website that's not irs.gov, or it's not the state taxing website, and they try to have you make the payment right then and there, scam. I would rather you assume that it's a scam and tell them, I will figure this out, I will verify who you are, and then I will make the payment, rather than make a payment on the spot. They're not going to arrest you on the spot. And very rarely are they going to, it takes them months to actually order seizure of any real property, vehicles, or anything like that. The biggest concern that you might have is, they might take some collection actions, but if it's the first time you're meeting with you, I would say 95 times or 99 times out of 100, they will give you a little bit of time because they know how bad these scams are. They know how pervasive identity theft is. So guard your information, verify. Don't take a week to do it. Do it in a couple days. You can always walk into a local IRS office, or you can call the IRS. If you don't know how, or it's too intimidating to call the IRS, you can always hire a tax professional. But again, the best time to call is between 5 to 7 p.m. later on during the week. And that's when you can get through and talk to the IRS. The states are usually open 8 to 5. Each state is a little different as to their hours. A lot of them are shutting down around 4:30. But you can usually get through, especially later on during the week, to the state tax agencies as well. Now, they all use outside collection agencies. So the IRS does it. The states do it. The states do it a lot more often. The IRS is doing it much more, but they got a lot of pushback, so they've kind of pulled back from it as much. But they still use outside tax or collection agencies. they'll call you and they say, hey, we need payment. But again, they're not going to threaten to take your house. They're not going to threaten to seize your property because they can't. So you can always say, look, I want to verify this. I want to call the IRS directly. I want to call the state directly and verify that this information is correct. Again, do it within a few days. Don't procrastinate. But they will always give you that time to verify it. And again, they should have an employee number, and they might not give you their full name, but they'll always have a supervisor or something like that that you can verify, hey, this is legitimate. And the best way is you call the original source, call the IRS, call the state and say, hey, do I have tax debt with such and such company? And they'll tell you and give you the number to call rather than the other way around. So, word of the day, don't trust, verify. Okay. So like the saying goes, trust but verify. Don't even trust, verify, verify, verify. Okay. How do you know that your identity has been compromised? Clearest way is your taxes aren't right. So, and there's plenty of times where people just mess things up. Where someone makes a mistake, someone issues you a W-2, especially if you know the person, if it's an employer that messes up, and usually they might issue 2 W-2s instead of 1. If they issue an incorrect 1099, you have to go in to your HR department, do it right away. If it's done in the same year, you have to go in there, be that squeaky wheel, raise some holy hell, and get them to fix it. If you know who it is, get them to fix it. If not, if they're not willing to work with you, if it's a former employee or former employer, or it's someone that you didn't do, I've seen it where vendors will get mad at someone, stop doing business with them, and then issue them a nasty 1099. That wasn't legitimate. You can prove that you never got the funds. It takes bank records. It takes showing that, look, there was an issue here. And you have to contest it with the IRS if you can't get the initial person to do it. You have to claim fraud on this, report it as fraud, and fight it. This is not an easy process. So don't assume, hey, as long as I claim fraud on income that I can claim that it's not legitimate. It is much easier to get them to change the numbers. So if you work for somebody and they mess it up, or if you have regular dealings, and mistakes can happen, and they do happen. Even with 1099s, W-2s, so when there's a mistake, try to get it corrected. You want to have that accurate information going in. But if you're getting underreporting notices or notice of deficiencies from the IRS, and it's about income that you had no clue about, this will usually happen a couple of years later. A year or two later, you'll file your taxes, everything looks fine, and then they'll come back and say, hey, there's some income reported that it was reported to us, but you didn't put it on your tax return. That's where you want to get in there and deal with it before it's even assessed. You want to say, hey, this isn't my income. Here's the proof. Here's my bank records. Here's everything I did receive. I didn't receive any from these jokers. I don't know who they are. That's the first indication that there might be a problem, is if you're just getting random income reported. Now, it might be someone working under a false Social Security number. And they're working, they're trying to do, work within the system, but not be in the system. And it gets reported to you as your income, messes up your taxes, messes up your situation. It makes it much harder for you to fix things. You have to go in, report it as fraud, get it addressed, because otherwise, and often they're paying taxes, they're paying Social Security and all that, but all of a sudden your tax returns are a mess. You don't have good information to file on, and it causes all kinds of problems. So you have to go in and report it. So in the second half, I'm going to hammer this in. If there's a problem, report, report, report. You have to raise those red flags, and you have to be consistent. So if you don't report these kinds of issues, that can be a problem. I'm going to take a step back. There's one other kind of fraud that you have to be aware of, and I've seen a couple of these already. Not very often, but scammers will put as many layers between them and their actual victims as possible. Makes it harder to trace for the FBI. They are tracing it. They are pursuing this. So true story. Gal called in and she had been. People said, "Look, we just need to use your bank accounts. You work with us. You're working with us. We're going to deposit money into your accounts, and we just need you to send it to this other account, and you get a small cut." She said, "Okay." She didn't know better. This is called money laundering. So if anybody is suggesting you're not the true victim, they're not taking money from you, but it sounds too good to be true. It's too easy. We just need to, we're in a foreign country. We just need to use your bank account, something like this. Red flag, huge red flag. So true story in this case, the actual scammers were investigated and prosecuted by the DOJ and the FBI. So, they were investigated, the hammer came down, and in the middle of this, she ended up with $80,000 still left in her accounts. Now, this money was all stolen from people that are victims. But how do you identify the victims? How do you figure that out? She didn't know. I told her, "Look, don't touch that money. Just leave it there. The FBI knows about it." But the only reason she wasn't prosecuted as part of the scam is that the moment she was contacted, she disclosed everything. She went hands up and said, this is the contract. This is what I know about. I didn't know about all this other stuff. So as long as you're forthright and you disclose, you can usually avoid problems. But again, be aware of being part of a scam, but not actually a victim, because you can end up the victim too. You can end up as being prosecuted if you do not cooperate. And best thing to do is don't get involved. Someone comes along and offers something that sounds too good to be true. It's usually illegal. Talk to an attorney first, because you do not want to be wrapped up in a DOJ investigation, which is Department of Justice, or have the FBI digging into you and your family. Even if you're innocent, it is not fun. It is very scary. So going back to how to tell if your identity has been compromised. You have income reported that's not yours. Someone else files a tax return that you did not authorize and file. Or government benefits have been claimed that you didn't ask for. There are horror stories out there, and I've seen them. Usually someone has an ex-boyfriend or an ex-girlfriend or whatever that stays with them. They have access to their social security number. They let them have access to their bank records. And they take all of that information and run with it. They move out. They're no longer with them. And, again, it's not just international scammers you have to be worried about. There's all kinds of people. They know if they're used to dealing with shady people, they know they can take that personal information. They can sell it, which is what frequently happens, or they can just use and abuse it. So they can file tax returns in your name. As long as they have all that personal information, they can do it online. They can get refunds sent to a different account. And I've had people that they had to fight like crazy because someone else was filing tax returns in their name. They changed the address with the IRS. So when they called in to verify their information, the address had changed. Like, hey, I am who I am. They walked into a local IRS office with their birth certificate, all that. The local IRS offices can look at it, but they're not the identity fraud unit. You have to report it. You have to go to the police. You have to go to the FBI. You have to report it to the IRS as fraud. And it's going to take probably years to get it all sorted out. So that's why it saves so much time and headache to protect your information from the start. If you have a boyfriend, girlfriend, even a live-in, don't have your information out there. Don't give them your social security number. Do not share that information. That is personal. That is private. And I see this happen with married people when they get divorced. So it's too easy for the husband to, if they're filing, and I do see this where husbands or wives, usually it's husbands, but they'll still file a tax return, put their information on that, and then file a return. The spouse needs to contest that as fraud. I never filed this return. I never approved it. And again, they're filing for me. If that's an easy one, but a lot of times if they know, hey, I'm the number one suspect as the husband, they'll sell the information. And we're coming up on another break, so I have one last thing that I want to talk about in our last section is how to stop the damage with IRS and states. But real quick, there was another article recently, just came out the other day. I shared it with my staff. A watchdog came out and again ripped the IRS apart because they did not have, or they still don't have good fail safes. They're not following best practices as far as outside vendors, that their security clearances failed. So they couldn't do business with them, but they still had access to programs that allowed them access to hundreds of thousands of taxpayer information. There have been massive security breaches by the government and by the IRS. So unfortunately, sometimes your information is already out there and you don't know it. I served in the U.S. Navy. The very first thing we used to identify ourselves everywhere we went was our social security number. So I was like giving up my social. I was like, whatever. We have to do it all the time in the Navy. So I came out. I was like, whatever. They don't do that anymore, thank goodness. But it's unfortunately too often that information is out there. It's public. So again, that's why people use passwords. That's why the IRS, you have to verify your address. It has to be on your last tax return. They ask for middle initials. They ask for date of birth. They ask for all kinds of information. And that is all in an attempt to fight identity fraud. When we call in, we always have to have a power of attorney. We always have to have their information. And I was like, you know what? Now they ask for my date of birth, my social, and all kinds of information. And I'm like, for the clients, they ask for a lot more. I'm like, why is this? And I was complaining to a CPA. And the CPA is what we used to just call in and pretend we were the client all the time. I was like, really? He's like, yeah, we got away with that all the time. Like, you're the reason I have to now jump through more hoops with the IRS. I was like, who's doing that? Well, people were doing it. A lot of times it's innocent, but a lot of times it isn't, and it hurts a lot of people. So stay tuned. We'll be back and talk about how to address it when identity theft happens, and we'll wrap up today with that. So again, be back after a short break. Welcome back, everybody, to Taxes Made Easy, and we're focusing on identity theft, identity scams, and how to protect yourself and make sure that you are protected. Again, huge topic. It affects so many people. And so how to stop the damage with IRS and state taxes. This is really what we're going to focus on for the last bit that we have here. So first of all, protect your identity. That's the easiest way is to prevent it from ever happening. Do not overshare. Go over this information with your family members that are elderly because they're targeted the most. It's not just elderly that get targeted, but most younger people have grown up where identity theft is a problem. Like I said, I grew up, I'm 46, but 20 years ago, 25 years ago in the Navy, we used our Social Security like candy. We gave it out to anybody that asked because that's how we identified ourselves. Not so anymore. So much has changed in the last 20 years. Older generations aren't used to that. So please sit down with them, go over this, emphasize. So like banks when you call in a bank, they will never ask for your routing information or your bank account number. They will never ask for that. They will verify who you are, but with other information. Same thing with the IRS and states. They will never ask. Well, the IRS and states will only ask for your information when you call them, when you initiate the contact. If they're initiating the contact, you should ask them to verify themselves, because they almost never do that. Only if it's an outside collection agency or a revenue officer, which is fairly rare. Um, if you want, and you should always verify who they are, check them out online, and even tax professionals. Are there plenty of people that scam people, or tax professionals that put themselves out there? I can't tell you how many CPAs, not CPAs, but tax preparers have taken people's information and run. They've given them bad advice, they filed bad returns, incorrect returns, and run, even taking refunds, and then try to hide. It has happened, and there's plenty of people that get prosecuted on a regular basis for this. So verify who they are. Look them up. Any person claiming to be an attorney, you can go to the state bar, whatever state they claim to be an attorney. If they don't know what state they're an attorney in, it's a fraud. You can always look them up. You can see if there's any discipline on the state bar website. If there is, that's pretty serious. Not always, but it can be. You need to look at the situation. I had an associate that had a state bar complaint filed against her because the person was just too impatient. It took the IRS 11 months to respond on an offer in compromise. And at month 9 or 10, he just got too frustrated. He said, "I think you're blowing smoke at me. I don't believe you're legitimate." And he filed a bar complaint. Month 11, the IRS first response was an accepted offer. So he withdrew his complaint, but it still shows as a black mark on her record, which is a true shame because she's a great attorney. But look at things, check them out, look them online, make sure they have good reviews. If they're a CPA, you should be able to verify with the state, where they're licensed. Enrolled agents are designated by the IRS, but again, you should be able to verify their business. They should have a business registered with the Secretary of State, and you should be able to check reviews, make sure that they're legitimate for any tax company or tax professional that you're looking to hire. Once someone has your identity and is using it, you're seeing fraud pop up. Like I said, and again, broken record, report. Report it to the IRS, to the state, the FBI, file a police report. Especially if you know them. Too often, not much can be done unless you actually know the person, if they're actually known to the police. So if not much can be done when you file a police report, why report it? Because if you don't report it, if you don't show that this is bothering you, that this is a problem that you want it addressed, then the IRS might not take you seriously when you report it to them as fraud. They want to see it was filed with the FBI. They want to see that you filed a police report, that you're doing everything you can to correct this. But reporting it helps you and helps show that you are not part of the problem. When you do report it as fraud, your account with the IRS will be locked, which means you will need a PIN to access your account. It will be much harder to file your taxes, and you have to keep this information. You have to stay on top of it. So when you submit a fraud report, you are going to get a letter from the IRS with specific instructions on how to unlock your account. You have to follow those instructions. So again, if you have to respond to the IRS letters, you have to get a special PIN. When you file your taxes every single year, you'll have to do it in a special way. It's going to be a pain. But this is how they prevent other people from continuing to use your identity. Worst case I saw is where they were actually changing their address with the IRS. So their address, they couldn't verify themselves because of this. So this is where you actually have to go in and request to sit down with the supervisor and present all your information to them. But again, this is why, and that was done by someone that they knew personally. So keep your information confidential. And again, if you're married, you're going to share information. But if it's a boyfriend, girlfriend, be aware. Again, you might love them. You might love them like a spouse. But if they could break up with you and move out tomorrow, Be aware. Be aware. Protect your information. Um, so when you do lock your account, be aware that it's going to be a problem. And number one key, like all of these issues, do not procrastinate with dealing with identity theft. It can only get worse with time, and the IRS does not like it if you don't take it seriously. If you know this is going on and you don't move on this, it shows the IRS that you're not that interested. You might be part of the problem, whatever. You want to report it. You want to get on top of it. These times where people have been scammed out of hundreds of thousands of dollars when they realize it's a scam. You have to address it. And it's scary. It's scary. People are embarrassed when they get their identity stolen or they get scammed. One of the big concerns, the one case in the big case in New York, over $1 million was scammed from this lady. She essentially emptied out her retirements. Her children were very concerned about putting her in a home. They thought they needed to put her in her home. They needed to get a conservatorship over her finances. She didn't qualify for a conservatorship, but at the same time, it was a big enough issue that it was a discussion among the family because they're trying to protect her. So when you have those discussions, be aware. It is so common, and prior generations, they did not have the same awareness and concern about identity theft. The world has gotten to be a much scarier place in many respects when it comes to identity fraud, theft. And again, it's been with the internet, with social media and all that, you can pretty much get scammed by anybody halfway across the globe, halfway across the world. And again, they target people for a reason. Doesn't mean that they don't have an idea, but if it is a concern, if someone is losing their faculties, you need to get things in place to protect them before that happens. So, and this is the really hard part, is that if you have a financial power of attorney, if you have people around you that can help you, get those power of attorneys in place beforehand. Because once they start losing any kind of mental ability, or you'll start deteriorating mentally, it is so much harder to get this taken care of. You have to show that someone is actually unable to handle their finances. You have to go to the courts. Whereas if you do it beforehand, it's a simple power of attorney. Now, I've seen this where a wife got a financial power of attorney for her husband because he was starting to show signs of Alzheimer's. But they were about the same age. 10 years later, she still has the power of attorney, and she's starting to show signs of dementia. So the children never got the power of attorneys. That was never passed on. So try to do it for someone younger and have contingency plans in place. Talk to an estate attorney that can set up all of that for you. If you want to do it yourself, I know here in Arizona, you can access these forms for free online. And again, why they might not be the most savvy or cover a complicated situation, you can get this stuff done for free in most places, or go talk to an estate attorney and they can get this taken care of for you. So if someone has been scammed, doesn't mean they need to be put in a home. Have some understanding, but be there, support them. And that's the thing. People need to know that their family is there to love them no matter what happens. If someone does get scammed, provide that support for them, but be understanding. Again, there's a lot of elder care issues that go along with this. And I want to finish up with a couple final notes. If you don't get anything else from this, focus on this. First of all, whenever you're talking to someone, verify who they are. If someone calls you, if someone comes to your place of business, to your home, verify who they are. If they don't verify who they are, they're probably trying to scam you. So, and the IRS almost never calls. If you get letters, don't respond to the letters that aren't from a legitimate taxing agency. How do you know? Get a second opinion. We will review tax letters for free. Just email it to them. We'll take a quick look. Yep, that's a fraud, or that's legitimate. You have a serious issue. So again, if you have questions, double check it. Make sure it's done. It is correct. And if you are a suspect, or if you suspect that you're a victim of identity fraud, report, report, report. Get those filed. Stop, get a hold on your situation, because trust me, I've seen these get a lot worse, have left people in very bad situations. But even if you are the victim of identity fraud, I always want to emphasize this. People come in and they feel like they have no options. Their world is collapsing around them. I had a couple Monday that came in, and they own a business, they have a lot going on, and they thought they were going to jail. They all thought all this stuff was going to happen. And if you go and you talk to someone and they don't talk straight to you, and the IRS almost never jails people, especially for just not filing. You have to be actively hiding assets. You have to be actively trying to fool the IRS and commit fraud on the U.S. government, and that's really serious and that's bad. But even then, if you report it and you get straight, that you don't have to worry about anything like that. So key thing is, be upfront with the IRS when this happens, report it, get straight, and it will solve so many problems. And my point here is that even though you think your situation is bleak, there's almost always a way out. Getting a identity fraud lock on your account is a way to stop the damage, and you might have to wait a year to get everything straightened out so you can start filing your taxes again. But that's better than people stealing your identity moving forward. So when people file fraudulent returns and they get these huge refunds, and then the IRS comes back, they can't find the fraudster. They're going to find you and hold you responsible. If you report it right away, you can show, look, this was not me. And if you don't think this is happening every single day with the IRS in states, it happens. And people rip off. They tend to target the federal government more because they're bigger and they're slower moving. But again, it is something that IRS is very aware of. I've been to conferences talking with senior members of IRS, white-collar investigations, fraud investigations, criminal enforcement, and they are absolutely pounding the pavement trying to get ahead of this. It's just happening so much, and it's so profitable for the scammers that they're limited in what they can do. But the more you report, the easier it is for them to find who's doing this and stop it. So there's almost always a light at the end of the tunnel. And when I say almost always, I mean 99.9%. There's almost always a way out. There's almost always a way to find that piece and get this tax burden off of your shoulders. And again, I can't emphasize how much stress is released when people sit down with us and we talk about their rights and options. We give them a path moving forward. We sat down with someone yesterday, and she was very concerned. She had new tax debt. They were doubling her installment agreement payment. We sat down and walked her through the whole process. She had too much money. There wasn't much we could do for her. So we gave her some free advice. This is how you get some of the penalties and interest removed, etc. And like, hey, if you stop working, you might qualify for a better resolution. But she didn't. She walked out, didn't pay us a dime. We didn't ask for a dime. And she walked out with more information, more informed. Wasn't all good news, but she knew what she was facing. So if you feel lost and confused, call a tax professional, get good advice, and find that peace of mind that you deserve, that you should have. Again, our website is guardiantaxlaw.com. Our phone number is 520-485-7371. If you're getting scam letters, if you're concerned, if you don't know what's going on, give us a call. We'll talk to you for free and steer you in the right direction and give you that peace of mind. Thank you for watching again, live or on rebroadcast, and we will see you again tomorrow. Hubert Johnson signing off.